Hi, my name's Drew, and I'm going to be walking you through the Northern Lite today. We're going to start with the Happy Jack remote system here. Now to start this and pair it with the board on the inside of the unit, we're going to push the two center buttons to turn the remote on. Two very top buttons are going to go ahead and pair that remote with the board. When we're looking here, we have the driver side front, driver side rear, passenger side front, passenger side rear. So orientation is going to be from the rear. What we have here is going to be up or down. That's going to be all the jacks up or down. Now they are 4 independently geared motors. Of course, there is going to be slight variances, so even when you are running all the jacks at the same time, you're going to make sure that you are paying special attention at the pace of them. So always one thing to also keep in mind is that you are going to want to make sure that you keep the rear of the camper slightly lower than the front. Of course, it would make sense that it is front heavy with that cab over, so keep that in mind. Now, if this happens to run out of batteries, you do have the option of plugging this in directly to the board. Now, we're going to take a look at that board when we get to the driver's side of the unit. But while we have you here on the passenger side, we're going to go ahead and talk about the jacks a little further. Now, these jacks have a manual option in the event that you were to have like a power loss situation, something wasn't working correctly with the board. You could go ahead and remove this plug here off the side, and then if we go ahead and disengage this motor on the internal of the inside of the unit, we're going to go ahead and find a crank handle that will allow us to manipulate that jack up or down in the event that we do need to either load or unload in some sort of emergency situation. Swing outs are on the built, come standard with the unit. We have them in the swung out position. This would be the position for either loading or unloading.
Or Kevin?
So to fold them back in, we just push the spring here. That will allow that to fold in. Now that's going to be the travel position. What you want to pay special attention to is when you do go to unload it, especially if you have a dually or something, you need to make sure we are pulling those out. The camper should never be lifted with them in this in position. It's not going to give you the stability that you're going to need when utilizing the unit. 2 compartments here, those are going to house your batteries. Of course, we're out here on the lot. We haven't prepped the unit for delivery yet, but you would have 2 Group 24 deep cycle batteries in these compartments. That's going to make up your battery bank. They are lead acid batteries, so what that means for you is 2 or 3 times a year we're going to go ahead and pull those vent panels up. We're going to refill with distilled water as necessary. You're going to find a clear marked water line. It is just our goal to maintain that water line. Moving on here, we have your awning in the out position. We'll get to that just here in just a moment. We have your outside speakers. We're going to get to those on the inside as well. If we take a look here under this louvered door, we have your refrigerator. Now this refrigerator is an ammonia absorption style refrigerator. Not too terribly much maintenance is going to be taking place here from this area. Biggest thing with this is give it a visual inspection a couple times a year, and it's very important that we do keep mud daubers and flying insects from nesting within the compartment here. So what that means is for this particular model, I don't believe they make a specifically cut bug screen for this. Go to Home Depot, go to the hardware store, get some screening material, place that over the cutout there, shut the door, trim off the excess. It's very important, again, that we keep mud daubers and flying insects from nesting within the appliance. Those insects in particular are attracted to the smell of propane, and they want nothing more but to make this their new home, so it is very important, again, that we keep them from doing so. As mentioned previously, other than that, give it a visual inspection. Make sure everything looks good visually. Make sure you don't see any frayed wires, any cracked lines, anything like that, and you should be good to go. Again, all your controls are going to be on the front side of that unit. Here we have your furnace vent. That is the exhaust vent for your furnace. Just make sure you let it exhaust. We're not going to want to put any equipment up in front of it. We want to keep that free breathing. Also going to be a large intrusion point for mud daubers and flying insects, so it is very important that we do screen that off. They do make a specifically cut screen for this on the aftermarket, and that's going to be best case scenario to just go ahead and utilize that screen. Above my head here we have the porch light. That has an easy on-off switch there on the fixture. It's very, very straightforward. We have your awning here. As we see, it is in the out position. Now you have two support legs here on the base or the front cover of that awning. Of course, when it is on the truck, it's very hard to reach those. Very easy to go ahead and pull those out. Now when it comes to cranking it back in, we of course have your crank handle attached here. We're just going to go counterclockwise, bring that in until it's fully seated. So it makes great sense. Very easy to do. If you have any questions on how to pull those legs out, we can of course show you that while you're here. Awning handle does telescope, so you can go ahead and fold that down. Go ahead and store that in the basement or wherever you feel inclined to do so. Two 20-pound propane tanks are going to be housed here. They of course slide out, held in by a tension band. In between those tanks, we have a propane regulator. As you can see, you can directionalize which tank you want to draw off of as your primary tank. This is an automatic switchover regulator, so if we have both valves open, it's going to automatically switch over to that secondary tank and allow you to kind of do that without skipping a beat. Now, if you want to go ahead and be more aware of the level of propane you have, keep your secondary valve closed, keep your primary valve open, then you'll have to manually come out here and go ahead and switch over. Now we have a flow indicator here. Of course, since since there's no propane in these bottles and no propane flowing through the line, this is red here. If we were to go ahead and have propane flowing through the line, it's going to go ahead and pinwheel over to green there. Very straightforward. Now to feed everything back in, you want to make sure that your everything is routed properly and you're not pinching any hoses here. And your tension band is out of the way here. And then once we go ahead and slide that in, we're just going to go ahead and latch it, keep those tanks secure as well. So very straightforward stuff there. We have your Awning generator here. Now, generally you're not going to be accessing the generator in this capacity during use. The reason why I have that front cover removed is I just want to show you there is a little breaker down here on the below that power switch. It's a little yellow light switch style breaker. That is your outputting power breaker. So what happens is it's kind of a famously soft breaker. So generally, if you are going down the road, you hit a bump, that bump's going to be enough to trip that breaker. You're going to get to your destination, you're going to fire up your generator. It's going to run as normal, but it is not going to produce any power. What you're going to need to do is reset that to restore function to the breaker. So again, up or down, light switch style breaker, the on position is going to be up. Auxiliary switched on the inside. So again, you're probably, other than setting that breaker, resetting that breaker, or doing any maintenance, probably not much you're going to be doing from this location here. Moving on here to the rear of the unit. Not really too terribly much here in terms of function. Of course, we have the awning out. We're going to get to the operation of that when we get to the inside. You of course have your roof ladder access. It's going to be my recommendation, as well as the manufacturer's recommendation, that we do a 360-degree top to bottom inspection every 90 days to check the condition of your sealants. We're going to look for any degradation in those sealants, and we're going to touch up as necessary. Of course, to access the roof, you're going to go ahead and use the ladder here. Now, assist handle very easily folds up and over, locks in that extended position here. Underneath the entry door, we have your basement. This is good for any long-term storage. Does have the pull-out tub here. Generally, people keep their crank handle in here for the awning, whatever other long storage you may have. Now with that in place and the door closed, we can go ahead and take your second step here And we're going to go ahead and put that here on the tracks. And you have some thumb screws here we can go ahead and tighten up to keep that from shifting on you. From there, when you're going down the road, you're going to go ahead and lift these steps up. And I like how they have that grip tape on both sides, so you can use them on either that folded up position or that unfolded. So we have a pin here that's going to feed in here on the step, and that's going to secure them when you're going down the road. Sometimes you have to give it a little wiggle there to get that pin to actually seat, because it's going through 3 points. So again, that's just to keep things nice and secure when you're going down the road, and then when you're ready for use, you just go ahead and pull that pin out and then go ahead and fold them back down. Just about covers it here on the rear. Again, we're going to get to that awning once we get into the unit. Moving around here, quite a bit going on in this compartment here. Not sure how much of this is going to translate onto the camera, but we have your dump valves, we have your low point drains, you have your freshwater drain, all in this compartment here. So starting all the way back here on the wall, we have your jackboard remote. Now, this is the location where we would plug in that remote if we were having, if we ran out of batteries. We're again going to remove this. On the inside of the unit, you're going to find a coiled, looks like an old telephone handset. We're just going to plug that directly onto the board here where it says remote in. Again, that's going to be our direct connection to the board in the event that the remote on the battery, or the battery on the remote runs out. Also there in this compartment, we have your gray water valve back here, and we have your black water valve a little forward here. Now, gray water is going to be sink water, shower water, relatively clean water. Black water is going to be anything that comes from the toilet, so solid body waste, toilet paper, things like that. It's very important that we keep these valves in the closed position and only dump as necessary. So especially with that black water tank, the contents of it, we want to keep that in as wet or flowing condition as we can, so that waste is going to easily evacuate that tank. So scenarios are, you're either going to dump if you're changing locations, or if your tank fills up, there's a monitor panel on the inside to monitor that level. When it does come to dump, we're going to hook up a sewage hose here onto the bayonet style fitting here. Now, your sewage hose is just going to connect very easily. You have 4 prongs here on the outside of that tube. We're going to put your sewage hose kind of in the halfway position in between the 2 prongs. We're going to give it a quarter turn and lock it on. Once we're locked on, we're going to go ahead and give this valve a 6-inch pull directly towards you. The gray water valve is going to be a 6-inch pull up. That's going to open both of those, but it is very important that we only open one at a time. So treat it like a vacuum lock. These should never be open at the same time. So dump your black water, close it, and then dump your gray water. That's going to help rinse out that shared plumbing as well as your sewage hose on the way down. Also in this compartment, we have your freshwater drain. You're going to see that down here. That's going to drain the freshwater from the bottom. So all of these valves that we're talking about are going to transition through the floor. So that's going to be draining your freshwater holding tank there. And if we come over here to the other side of the compartment, right here, you have your low point drains. Now, those are going to be the lowest point in the unit's plumbing. That's how we're going to drain everything in between water source and fixture. Is going to be drained via these 2 points. So just about, you can take care of all of dumping all of your waste water and physical waste from this one compartment. Now, manufacturer recommends that anytime the unit is going to be in storage for more than 7 days, that it is stored without water in it. That means draining the freshwater tank, draining the low point drains, and finally draining the water heater, which we're going to get to here at a later date. Also have a little light in that compartment as well. Switch is going to be right there on the fixture. So very straightforward. Outside shower here gives you access to hot and cold water, all self-contained within that little door. Works exceptionally well to rinse off any critters, wash your feet off if you go to the beach, whatever. We have your city water connection here. Now what that means for you is if you're staying in the capacity of an RV park, this is where we're going to hook up. Water pressure becomes very important when we do talk about the city water connection. These units are generally rated for 75 psi water pressure at the max. Generally you'll probably want to run them in between 40 and 50. Now with any water pressure regulator, you're going to hook that directly onto the water source. You're then going to hook your hose onto that water pressure regulator and then ultimately making your connection here on the trailer. Now the only thing that you should be connecting here at the trailer is going to be your hose. And you're going to do so by rotating this connection here. Very, very important. That's going to give you full-time access to running water, but it is very important that we do not exceed those pressure ratings. We have your power supply here. Very easily just plug straight in. There's no turning of anything like that. You just plug straight in. Give this secondary collar a screw down. That's going to keep everything much more secure. Keep somebody from potentially tripping over your cord and disconnecting you. Down low, nothing going on down there. Brings us to your 6-gallon capacity water heater. Now this is a dual source water heater. It's going to run on 110 volt electricity as well as propane gas with 12 volt direct spark ignition. 6-gallon capacity as well. You do have different efficiency numbers when it does come to what sources you're using. If you're using propane and electricity, you're going to look at 17 gallons per hour. Straight up propane is going to be 15 gallons per hour. And then electricity, standalone electricity, is going to be 11 gallons per hour. Now it is very important that we drain this properly. The manufacturer again recommends that there should be no water stored in the unit for more than 7 days. So when it does come to draining it, it's very important that number one, we allow that to cool down. Once we're certain of the temperature, we're then going to depressurize it. Now to depressurize it, we're going to find the internal fixture. We're going to use the hot side of any fixture within the unit. So whether that's the outside shower a little further down there on the body or one of the fixtures on the inside. We're going to first start by cutting the inflow of water to the unit. So if we're using city water, we're going to physically turn that spigot off. If we're using the potable water here, we're going to turn that 12 volt water pump off. Once we've done that, we're then going to go to the hot side of any spigot. We're going to turn that hot side on. We're going to see a little bit of water come from that fixture. Once that water stops, once you stop seeing that water, that is your indicator that it is depressurized and you are ready to go. Now from there, you're going to go ahead and drain it from this location here. Again, this unit hasn't been prepped, so the water heater is already empty and the drain plug is not in place. I'm going to go get that drain plug so we can take a look at that. All right, so here we have your drain plug. Now this is going to be a 15/16 size here. Placement is going to be right here. So when it comes to draining the unit, of course we've already depressurized the unit. We're going to come in here with a 15/16 wrench. Access is going to be tight, so generally for me, I put my wrench here right within this diverter here. I go ahead and back that out. The remaining 4 or 5 gallons of water is going to come here from this location. When putting it in, you got to be very careful. These do cross thread fairly easy. Very important that we keep this a nylon plug though. If we replace this with like a brass plug, that voids your warranty with that with Dometic. It also is going to, this is also utilized as a secondary safety feature. So what that means for you is that if the pressure relief valve on the actual unit were to fail and the pressure within the unit started to gain, this is going to overcome these threads and spit this out, relieve that pressure manually. Maybe not a bad idea to keep a couple spares of these with the unit in the event that maybe you cross-thread it out there in the wild. You are going to have to source these from an RV dealer, so keep that in mind there. Once we've drained the water heater, manufacturer recommends that we prime it or pump 6 gallons of water to the unit before we use it. We're trying to avoid any dry fire scenarios. This is a porcelain lined water heater. If we do heat it up with no water, it can actually crack that porcelain lining, effectively ruining the heater there. That scenario is going to look very similar to draining it. Of course, we're going to make sure our drain plug is in place. We're going to then introduce a flow of water to the unit, either the city water connection or the potable water here. Once we do so, we're going to again go to the hot side of any fixture. We're going to turn that hot side on. Now we're going to see a little bit of air, a little bit of water coming from that fixture. That flow is going to be very spitty, very interrupted. Reason being is it is displacing the water within the holding tank here and replacing it with air. So once that flow normalizes at the fixture, that is our indicator that we can go ahead and choose our power source and start heating our hot water. Also, we have some grating here. It is again important that we do screen off that grating, keep any mud daubers and flying insects from nesting within the appliance. Up top here we have your potable water. Now this is how we're going to fill that onboard water tank. We're going to stick a drinking water hose directly in. We're going to fill it up till it overflows. Once full, we cap it off. Again, just to remind you, you do need to use that 12-volt water pump switch to turn that pump on and draw that water up from the tank to the fixtures to make it usable. And then lastly, we have your cable satellite inlet here. Now that is just a pass-through connection to the designated TV area of the camper. That will allow you to feed either a park cable service or an aftermarket satellite package to the inside of the unit. Just about covers it here on the exterior of the unit. We're going to go ahead and hop on the inside and take a look at those features. All right, so here on the interior of the unit, right here by the entry door, we have your fire extinguisher. Now it is very important that we do test all of our safety equipment every single time we take the unit out. In this scenario, we're going to push that green test tab down. If that springs back, that means we have life within the unit. If it stays depressed, that means it's time to replace the unit. We'll pull it out and get a new one. Up here a little further, we have your awning switch. Of course, we had that rear awning in the out position. What you see here, you probably can't see that through the door, but I'm just bringing it in. It's a momentary switch, so you can really choose how far you bring that awning in or out, depending on space restrictions, as well as you know, if it is slightly windy out, the awning, especially that rear awning, is going to be more secure the closer it is to the camper. We have your this switch here is going to be for the awning light. So there's going to be a set of lights on that tube when it is fully extended, and that is going to that's going to turn those on and off. And then we have your generator switch here. This is going to, of course, be the secondary generator switch. When I go ahead and want to light this up, I'm going to go ahead and hold that into the stop position. You'll hold that until you see the light here. Of course, we don't have batteries on the unit, so we don't have a battery for that to start on. But once you see this orange light here, we're then going to go into the start position, and we're going to hold that until it starts. Now, if it's been a little while since you've ran the generator, of course those lines have filled up with air. We want to make sure we don't over crank the generator. So count in your head and make sure you're not cranking it for more than 10 seconds. We have your charge controller here. Now this is your solar charge controller. This is going to give you a real-time readout of what you're taking in via solar, the rooftop solar, how many amp hours you're taking in, so on and so forth, what your voltage is sitting at. We see some displays here on the unit, but again, they're not real accurate since we are not hooked up to batteries. Down low here, we have your battery disconnect switch here. This is how we're going to isolate that battery bank within the unit for periods of long-term storage. It's very important that we do go ahead and disconnect the battery. With any 12-volt system, you're going to have nominal or phantom draws within that system. This is going to go ahead and isolate that battery for storage. So generally, those issues are no big deal from the day-to-day, but compounded through months of storage, you may see some wear and tear on that battery. So anytime you have the unit in storage, just go ahead and remove that key. That's going to go ahead and disconnect that battery. Coming here into the bathroom, of course, when we are going down the road, that door needs to be in the closed position here. You go ahead and slide that lock back. That allows you to go ahead and slide this open. Once we're in here into the restroom, we have your flush there on the right side of the bowl, left side if you're sitting there. It'll be a light pull to fill up the bowl with water, full pull to flush. Very important that you use single ply RV grade toilet paper, as well as a deodorizing chemical treatment, a tissue dissolver, things like that. All of those products are going to be introduced here in the through the toilet, but of course, generally you'd follow the directions of the product that you're using, but most of them you're going to again introduce the product here directly at the toilet. You'll put a gallon or two of water down there with it, and you're good until you dump the holding tanks. You're good until you dump those holding tanks. Generally, when in storage, it's going to be my recommendation to go ahead and put a chemical treatment down there while it is in storage. That's going to help keep things fresh when you do go ahead and return the unit back to service. Other than that, here in the restroom, of course, not too terribly much. We have your tissue hanger here. We have your vent fan here. Just again, not too terribly much. You're going to have an on-off power switch here. A little 2.5 amp fuse holder. Very straightforward stuff. Light switch here is going to be right there on the fixture. If I turn around, we can get a look here at your sink. We have your sink with your diverter here, and then on your sprayer, we're going to see an on-off switch here. That's going to be helpful. That's going to be especially helpful to conserve your water consumption. Especially hot water consumption. 6 ounces of water doesn't translate to an exceptionally long shower. So anything we can do to kind of help that is going to be beneficial for you. Generally, most of my customers do military Navy style showers where they're turning that water on and off throughout their shower to help conserve that water. Above my head here, we have an on-off switch. It's going to be for the porch light that we saw here at the rear of the unit. Again, just to light that space while you're using it. And then above my head here, we have a fan. We're going to go ahead and use this remote to control that fan. This is a fantastic fan. This remote works exceptionally well. If we go ahead and turn that on, it's going to go ahead and lift that fan up. If we go ahead and look here at the display, I have speed, so up and down. That's going to be 15% increments there in terms of speed. And then I can also set a thermostat too, and then it will stay on or off it'll kick on and off to maintain that set temperature. We have air in and out, which means we can either bring air in from the outside or exhaust air here from the inside. And then of course we can close that lid. We can keep that fan on and running to circulate air with inside the unit, kind of like a ceiling fan. Refrigerator here. All my controls are going to be here on the top of the unit, the eyebrow panel here. What you're going to have is going to be an on-off switch there. It'll go into like a boot up mode. It's going to default to auto, and for us, that's really the only source available at this time. It always defaults to AC voltage if it's not available, and then it's going to, if it's not available, it's going to go ahead and switch over to gas. If I want to kick it into gas mode, I hit this last switch. It's going to take it from either DC mode or AC mode into gas. So whatever mode you're in, it's going to take it into gas. And then the second switch is going to take it from whatever mode you're in to DC. So just think about this last one's for gas, middle one's for DC. The only other option is going to be AC and auto, which is kind of the default setting. Then we have cold and coldest here, a scale of 5 there. Of course, 5 being the coldest, 1 being just cold. If you have any problems with that, you have a check light there. If it fails to light on gas, if your AC voltage gets interrupted, it's going to go ahead and illuminate that check light as well as giving an audible signal to let you know that there is an issue. So very, very easy to use. We have your cooktop here. It does have this glass that we fold back to expose your cooktop. Very easily going to light using sparker, which is going to be here. You have an igniter. We would turn to the burner on here, hold it in. While holding it in, we go ahead and rotate that clockwise. That's going to go ahead and light that burner up. Same with the oven. You have a pilot. Option here. You're going to hold that in while rotating that igniter until that pilot lights. From there, you can go ahead and rotate this to choose your temperature for preheating, things like that. Up top here, we have a fan, exhaust fan. We have a Lite with that Furon hood vent. It's going to work exceptionally well to exhaust any smells from hot air and smells from the cooktop here. Moving over here, we've already talked about your fan. We have a digital clock there, which is nice. We have your micro monitor here. Now this is going to give us a real-time readout of where our tanks sit. As you can see, all of your holding tanks are empty, and we see that because it's lit up here on the bottom. The more lights you see, the fuller they are. And our battery reads full. Now there are no batteries on the unit. Batteries will read full anytime you're plugged into shore power. So to get a true readout of where your batteries sit, you need to go ahead and unplug from shore power, and then we're going to go ahead and test from this location. Water pump here. That's going to pressurize that 12-volt or pressurize that potable water system, draw that water up from the tank, and make it usable. We have your furnace thermostat here. Very easy. It is a single mode thermostat. We turn that to heat. Once we've done so, we can dial our temperature up or down here, choose a temperature. 12-volt blower motor is right there underneath the cabinetry. So all of our heat is going to come from that location. Should have no problem, especially with the unit of this size, controlling temperature or whether that be hot or cold. Here into the dinette, we're going to take a look here at the windows. Now the windows are going to be the same throughout the unit. This one specifically is noted as an emergency exit, but all of them operate the same. This one is just slightly bigger. So you have these latches along the outside of the window. We can go ahead and open those up. They do have little buttons there that need to be pressed. So we open those up, and then we can lift the window out to choose a height. The higher you lift it, you'll hear a click. And there's about, generally like 3 to 4 positions. If we want to go ahead and bring it back in, we lift it past the click, and that's going to allow us to go ahead and bring it back in. Now when I look here at these latches, you have a couple options for those too. If I go and put this right there in the middle channel, that's going to keep that window open and vented. It's going to give us a fingertip's worth of opening with that window there. And then to all the way close it, we're going to pull all the way back past that plastic and latch all of these. Now for our shades, we have pull down shades. That's going to give us our screen. So if we have that window open, we can pull that down. That's going to keep the bugs and things from flying in. And then if we want some privacy, we can go ahead and pull that shade up from the bottom. When we disconnect them, this one's kind of on like a spring, so make sure you have a hold of it, or it'll kind of take off on you. We have reading lights here on each side of the window and the dinette. Those do house a couple USBs for charging, and the switch for those is actually on the rear of the fixture, and the USB is on the front. Table here makes a dinette. Or dinette makes a bed. To do so, you have a locking bar here. So I just go ahead and unlock that. That's going to allow this to fold down. Now, if I remove these cushions out of the way first, the all the way down position is going to be here on these ledges. So once we rest that tabletop on those ledges, we come back here and we go ahead and lock that bar. That's going to keep that from coming up inadvertently. Also, you do have a couple adjustments here on left or right adjustments. If we go ahead and loosen this thumb screw, we can then go ahead and rotate or move the table on this axis here, which is a pretty cool feature. When we do go to make it a bed, we do need to return it to center and make sure we are engaged here on both of these latches. Once that's in the fully down position, we take the rear cushions of each dinette and we go ahead and put those over the tabletop to go ahead and fill out that mattress. We also have some speakers under here, some ventilation for the, underneath the dinette. You got drawers on this one. Underneath this one's going to be a lot of your important stuff, wiring, holding tanks, things like that are going to be located here. Backing up a little bit, I have your carbon monoxide detector here on the floor. Now that is another very important piece of safety equipment. It does have a test button on it. We are going to make sure that we test it every single time we take the unit out. Again, we want to make sure it is in good working order. Here in the kitchen area, of course, exposing the sink here, large residential size sink. Very nice sink. Love the countertop extender there. Works very well. Down here below the drain board, we have your water heater switches for both sources, whether that's electricity or propane or both. Again, you can run them on both. That's going to give you the highest recharge rate. This red light here, that's going to be your indicator on whether or not the water heater has lit on propane. That will come on with the switch. You may see that flicker on and off a few times while it is going through its lighting cycle. Ultimately, if you come back 5 minutes later and it's still and that light is on, that means the water heater has not lit and it has encountered an issue and it's going to stop trying. So a couple of reasons as to why it may have not lit. Either you don't have your gas bottles on, you're out of gas, or highly unlikely in a unit of this size, but maybe it just the gas hasn't made its way through the tank to the appliance itself, and it's just taking longer than the lighting cycle will allow. Either way, if that happens, investigate, make sure you have gas in the tank. Then you can go ahead and turn the switch off, turn it back on. It'll recycle again. Generally, as long as you've corrected the issue, it will light on the first try of the second cycle. Coming over here this way, if we look here on this wall panel here, we have your multimedia center. That's going to be CD, DVD, AM, FM radio, Bluetooth. That's all going to be utilized through this panel here. That does communicate with the television. So anything we go ahead and feed through here can communicate again with the television. Below that, we have a couple charging station, a couple USBs, as well as a 12-volt cigarette lighter style plug. Again, that's helpful to power those devices off grid. We have the resettable GFI here. Now this is the main GFI. All of these receptacles are on the same circuit. This is going to be the reset point. You should have a test and a reset button there. If any of the function to those receptacles get interrupted, again, this is going to be the reset point for them. And then down low here, we have your fuse panel breaker box. If I go ahead and open that up, we have your automotive 12-volt blade style fuses there on the left. And then on the right, we have your resettable light switch style breakers. Just like you have in your fuse panel box at home there for your 110-volt appliances. On the left, it's not a bad idea to pick up a variety pack of fuses. Keep them with the unit in the event that one were to burn out and need to be replaced. In terms of function, everything is going to be labeled on the door. Now, looking here at your television, it's going to be secured a few different ways. You have a pin here. We can go ahead and remove that pin. And then you also have like a spring pin here. If we go ahead and lift or pull down on that, that will allow that TV to come out and swivel there into the common area of the camper. It is a 12-volt TV. You'll have access to it off-grid. If we go down low here, and this is always kind of tricky to pick up. Okay, so we have your wine guard antenna here. We would turn it on in this location there. Now this has a couple options. It has the auto locating, which I just set it to. That's going to pick out the best signal, and this is again for over-the-air digital programming. Or if you directionalize it here with these arrows, you can seek out your best signal if you want to go ahead and do that manually. This is again going to be for over-the-air programming. It works exceptionally well. Generally, we can pull channels from Waco here from our location. does have a service manual. I know generally these don't translate exceptionally well on the camera, but if you have any questions, either give us a call or consult the manual. We'll be able to go ahead and walk you through that. Above my head here we have the hike vent. Now I have the privacy shade pulled, but I can go ahead and slide that this way. We again have that screen option. And then if I want to go ahead and open it, there's a little release button. I push that release button in and I allow that bar to come down, so that motion is going to be there. And then I can go ahead and lift this open here. I have a couple positions as to the level of open I can choose, and that would be all the way open there. This is not only an escape hatch, as they call it, or fire exit, but this is a stargazing window, and is very effective in feeding air to the unit. Again, if you're having that in the open position, you can use the screen. You can use the privacy curtain there as well. Other than that, I mean, that's basically it here on the cab over. We have, of course, these same lights that we saw throughout on both sides of the bed. USBs are again built into those fixtures, and we got the same ceiling lights we saw as well. Just about covers it here with the Northern Light. We hope you enjoyed the walkthrough. Thank you very much for your time.